Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great Live Tasting live from Worsley. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here. We are joined by firm friend and super duper superstar, friend of the show, not Barry. Barry is not a friend of the show. Barry is the show. We're joined by friend of the show and Superfly, all-round wine babe, Jenny Frost. Hi, Jenny. How you doing?
Right. Yeah, all things
cool.
considered.
All right. Well, thanks for being massively fucking underwhelmed. The band is back together. The band is back together, and it's lovely to have you here. I've got to be honest with you, it is really lovely to have you here because Barry is so annoying.
Wait, I learned from Barry, so we're only gonna get one straight.
Oh god.
You just talked about that, so.
What can I say? It's all over.
Oh Christ. Right, guys, it's International Women's Day, or at least it was a little while ago. And so, as a direct consequence of that, what are we doing? That's right, exactly right. We are drinking delicious wine, celebrating female figures historically and contemporaneously in the world of wine, and drinking some delicious drops whilst we're doing it. Can everybody hear us, by the way? I hope everybody can. If not, well, we're all in the shit then, aren't we? Can everybody hear us on Zoom and on YouTube? Please do let us know. We've got a delicious lineup of wines. Jen, since you're here and since you are guest of honor, talk us through what it is that we're tasting.
Sweet. So, as Tom mentioned, these are all going to be, celebrated female winemakers, or at least female figures in the world of wine and in the history of wine. Starting off with the Susanna Balbo. Susanna.
It's the Grillo first.
Oh, okay. We're starting off with the Grillo. I just took it from the website. There you go. This is the information I've been provided with. We're starting off with the Bio Grillo, so a lovely Wow. She's rusty, okay?
She's ring rusty. She's ring rusty. She hasn't fought a proper fight in a while, so.
It's true. So we're starting off with some Grillo, so from Sicily, lovely and bright and just really juicy, you know. We're starting off easy. And then moving on to something a bit more complex, because that's definitely the way around you do it. The barrel fermented Toronto is the second wine. This is something I've not tried before, but I know that Barry is a really, really big fan of this. So let's see if it lives up to expectation. I'm sure it will, because he does know what he's talking about sometimes. It's nice. And then we're moving on to Austria. So the tasting a wine from Heidi Schrock. So a lovely native Austrian variety. We're going to be going for the
absolutely seminal figure in the world of wine is old Heidi.
Yeah.
Heidi has done the business, and she seems to deliver every single time that we have her on these tastings in store. Every time she's there, she absolutely smashes it. And we finish bars with one of yours.
Yeah, we're doing a wine by Ego Bodegas, an award-winning winery. From my portfolio, I work for Morgan Rowe. This is the Marinette. So we've done the Algori 38 barrels a couple of weeks back. It was a few weeks back now. Well lauded, that wine now. We got some really good news in Decanter magazine this week. 97 points. You know, you can get it at grapesgrowing.co.uk, I believe. You
can buy all of the wines that we're taking tonight actually on grapesgrowing.co.uk. And if you use IWD 30, you get 30% off. Barry?
30%? I didn't agree to that.
No, Barry does not agree to that. God, Barry doesn't have to agree to anything.
Anyway, so the Marinette is a juicy style of Monastrell with a little
easy, mate. You can wank off your own wines as we get there. But before we do, since we're here talking about International Women's Day, and the reason why we've asked Jen to be here is because if it was just me and Baz, two baldy bastards wanking on about wine and the effect that women have had within wine, that would be a little bit cringe. So part of the reason why we got Jen here, apart from the fact that she's amazing, we love having her here, is that Jen, you alongside your compatriot and resident girl on a forklift,
yes,
Lauren, have started a podcast. Lauren, do us a favour, please. Could you turn your camera on for us? Because we'd like to have a chat with you.
So, me and Lauren have recently started our own podcast, talking about our experiences in the world of wine. And my good friend Lauren, hi.
Hi, Lauren.
Hi. So she's kind of come from the opposite side of it. So obviously I've been in front of a camera, in front of the wine glass, pouring it, talking to people. And Lauren, you've come from slightly different side of things, right?
Yeah, kind of sticking my hands in soil, and pulling like worms out of it, basically.
Sound
Leave the worms
So, as we've got both, we literally have both sides of the vine here talking about us today. So, Lauren, do us a favour if you wouldn't mind. Just give us a brief rundown of what has led you to this stage at this point right here, where you are now talking on camera about wine.
So I got super lucky and ended up doing a vintage over in Australia in the Barossa Valley. I was working there for 2.5 years, kind of working as an assistant winemaker, working kind of as a between the vines for different sellers and whatever. Anybody basically wanted me to go work for them. I was like, okay, sweet, yes, hire me, thank you. And then I got lucky and ended up making my own monastrell, which is very small quantity, but it is delicious. No, it's okay. But it's
the most feminine and female thing in the world is to make something incredible and then immediately apologise for having done something really quite spectacular. Sorry, I didn't want to overstate the thing. You made fucking wine. Come on, let's big it up.
Like I said, it's more wine than any of us have made as well. I mean, I don't know whether you guys at home have made any wine, and definitely garage wine doesn't count, made out of blackberries or whatever. But like, you know, we haven't made it, so you're realms ahead of us in that, you know.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And then after Australia, I decided I want to leave the country that was trying to kill me, because I don't know who's been to Australia here, but everything that moves can kill you. It's great. That
is the rumor when it comes to Australia. Everything in Australia, including Australia itself, is actually trying to kill you at all times.
Yes, so be careful when you drink the wines. But
apart from the wine is good. Yeah, the wine's
great. But then
sorry, Lauren, did you make that monastery in Australia? Really? Wow.
I did, yeah.
That's well good, isn't it? Awesome.
Yeah, it's.
So you have launched a podcast. It's called Both Sides of the Vine, and you and Jen released your first episode on Wednesday of last week. I listened to it whilst I was sat by the pool. It was very interesting. It was lovely to have both takes, both behind, from in the winery and also from the person talking and pouring the wine. It was really interesting to have that sort of duality and dichotomy going on, which was great.
The whole side of it I've never thought of before.
Is that something that you had always seen yourself going, or is that you taking advantage of the current climate?
Of Jen. Yeah, I don't know. I think we talked about it a bit, didn't we, Jen? And then it just kind of came around and we got lucky and decided to actually do it instead of just talking about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things you've got to put things into motion. You know, you've got to say, right, hey world, I'm doing this thing, and you've got to follow through with it. You know, because the amount of things that just stay on the back of a beer mat. You know, it's one of those things. It's like the amount of times we got our heads together and said we want to do it, but we always made up excuses. You just can't make excuses. You just got to do it, for better or for worse. You just got to try your hand at it. And if you tell yourself you're going to be bad at something, you probably will be bad at something.
Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just start fucking doing something, and then boom, if you make it better each time, better each time. But honestly, you guys started out great. How did you find the experience of doing your first podcast, Lauren?
Hard. It was difficult. I'm not a very technical person. Jen's been an absolute godsend when it comes to this. But I mean, it's good. Like, we have the ideas and we've got the content. It's just the technical side of things is a bit more difficult than originally imagined. But it went okay. I think it'll only get better.
There she is again, putting herself down. I think it was
but it's true. Like, I think it was good for a first attempt, but it will get better as we go along.
Yeah,
it's good to have ambitions to want to improve stuff. It's good to have the desire to make something better and to improve it each time that you do it. But I don't think you should diminish the achievement of having got that first episode out. Just make sure you're consistent and keep getting it out. The world wants to hear from the lot of you, ladies and gents watching along at home. Head to Spotify and give them a follow, give them a like, give them a rating. Both Sides of the Vine. Next episode coming out a week. This Wednesday coming. So take a little look at that. Lauren, if you'd like to stay on, we'd love to have you to stay on and have your take, and we'll chat to you more later on. But I know you've got something that you do need to do. So we'll speak to you later. Thanks very much, Lauren, and we'll see you next time. Both Sides of the Vine now on Spotify. Right, back to tonight, ladies and gents. Let's have a little crack at tonight's delicious wines. Barry, this first one is the Bio Grillo. I feel like at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, we don't need to do a how to taste wine. If anybody would like to, you're more than welcome to go back and look at one of the the old videos where we talked through how to taste wine. But Barry, give us a little rundown. Firstly, let's dissect this wine. Let's get some wine in everyone's mouths. If you went with a cheese board, this obviously, which comes no surprise to anybody, would be paired with the goat's cheese. But Barry, this is the bio organic griot from Italy. Let's have a dissect, shall we?
So first off, let's have a little look at the intensity of colour. So quite a lot of colour to it, right?
Yeah.
When I was decanting this, I wasn't expecting this one out of the two, this and the Bar from Toronto's, to be so much deeper in colour.
Great variety in this case. Griot, it's got that really luscious sort of like yellow straw colour kind of vibe when it's pressed. There's no skin contact in this one, by the way. So this is all the juice, all from the must. Yeah, absolutely. Griot as a varietal is really lovely textured, so I'm hoping to see that probably into the legs of the wine. When we put it back up to its perpendicular, you might see a little bit of slow leggage. Plus also, this is Sicilian, so it's hot, and you're going to get some raised alcohol levels on this.
Hey, I went to Sicily recently.
Hey! Have you been there? Did you?
Yeah. Was it
Yeah.
amazing?
Me and Lauren went. It was great. We just drank so much and everything. Yeah. Oh no.
Okay.
Of course we did. Of course we did.
Yeah, 100%.
It was amazing. I've been waiting so long to say that.
It is amazing.
Oh,
Tell us, like, where did you go?
So we were actually in Palermo, but we did a few different trips around a couple of smaller vineyards, and we ended up in Marsala as well.
Oh.
Fabulous. It's not a wine. I think Marsala became very sort of untrendy, you know, and the stuff that I tried over there was absolutely outstanding.
Okay.
I was just, we're missing a trick. We really are. You know, the Marco de Bartoli stuff is absolutely incredible. One of the longest standing Marsala houses. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Marsala, but it was.
We're here to talk about fucking anything, aren't we, ladies and gents? The reason why you log on to this stuff is to hear us pontificate. So talk about your trip.
But yeah, it was that different side that, you know, it was the unexpected side of Sicily, which really kind of, you know, piqued my interest, if that made sense. Is the unexpected that really kind of was, well, unexpected, right? But yeah, I really, really enjoyed. I know, right?
Wow, that was.
It was a surprise, but of course it was.
But the unexpected was just so honest.
It was. I to say no, all the way on the other side, Barry. Next time. But yeah, we do want to go back and do Etna because obviously, you know, I just want to be drowned in Nerella Mascalese.
Hey, up.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, there's no bad thing to do. Did you?
Okay.
Anyway, back to the griot. Barris talks about it because we do need to talk about the wines and the winemakers in particular.
Nice and golden hue, lovely straw colour to it. It's got some relatively sluggish legs, so that can indicate a couple of things. In this case, would be grape variety and will also be ABV. On the
13%, which is pretty spicy for a white wine, which is kind of what you'd expect when you have a long ripening period somewhere hot. You get lots of sugar build up. You're going to have a boozy wine at the end of it.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want a big, heavy, boozy, cloying wine in somewhere that's really hot, like Sicily is. So we expect this to be kind of like bouncy and vibrant.
Yeah.
It smells of sweet citrus, particularly clementine.
Wow.
Got a little bit of stone fruitness, a little bit of peachiness, a bit of
Quite restrained on the nose.
Quite restrained, but there's
A little bit like orange blossomy sort of, you know.
it's quite ripe on the nose, isn't it?
Sarah Carter's dropping some bombs already with ripe pears.
Very ripe, yeah.
Guys, if you're watching along on Zoom, please head to the Grapes Great Live YouTube channel. Give us a like and a subscribe. Smash that like and subscribe button, guys. Leave a comment as well. All the things that we use the algorithms in our favour, please. Head to there. Smells of lockets, say the Mabses.
The yellow
ones.
ones. Like honeys. Yeah, the hot sweets.
The ones you take with your
In Holland, they call them strepsils.
No, they're strepsils.
Oh, okay.
That's a different thing.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, the honey and lemon ones, you know, it's got that little bit of like.
I was just in Holland, Bruges.
So you're like, I'm just eating pockets.
Yeah.
Like, oh, amazing.
Get out.
In Bruges, and then I was also in Holland.
Wow.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, I love that part of Holland.
Wow.
Smells great. It reminds me of an expensive perfume. It's quite perfumed. It's a bit of Neroli Portofino by Tom Ford on the nose. Hello.
Nobody came for that.
Okay.
Nutty butterscotch, say Lizzie and Paul, which I don't know if that's a request or if that's a tasting note. Oh, fuck me! What happened there?
I was trying to move it out of the way.
I just smashed a glass.
I'd be fine.
I'm really grateful that Barry was just smashed my most expensive glass.
I was like this. Jesus.
Do I need to be careful? Yeah, probably.
Oh, I tell you what. The tang on that, the booze isn't overwhelming. It's nicely integrated into that wine. On the finish, there is a little hint of that 13%. It's got a nice vibrancy to it, which I guess is exactly what you want. If you're somewhere hot, you want to have something that's going to refresh as well. And that nectarine, tangerine kind of citrus stone fruitiness is really right on the tip of your tongue, isn't it?
I know I always say this, but it's the texture. Yes, it tastes great. You know, the flavors are all there, but it's all about the texture. It's about the presence on the palate for me. And it is mouth coating, you know, it's
something knows better and more about this kind of stuff. We should have at the bottom of the screen there, hashtag presence on the palate. Presence on the
What does this retail at? You know?
Whatever you want to buy it for, it's 30% less if you head to credit.co.uk and use IWD 30 at checkout. But I'll give you a price tag. It's not ridiculously expensive. My gut feeling is it's £19 a bottle.
I mean, the majority of, I don't want to say it, but like Sicilian wine is usually quite an affordable option. You know, if you just want something that is really great value, something that's, like I said, this has got complexity, it's got depth to it. But so yeah, sub 20 quid, you know, it's
sub 20 quid. Plus you also get 30% off. That's pretty
15 quid.
It's pretty unbeatable, that, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things.
Summertime wine.
It's one of those things, right? So what we know as a fact about Sicilian wine is that it's massively slept on, or it was until recently when some big names all of a sudden started producing some really legitimate wines, and all of a sudden people were like, oh fucking hell, Sicily actually can do the business here.
But they've been doing the business for.
But they've been doing it low key on the DL, right? Shipping all their lovely juicy wines north to northern Italy. I was reading a book. It was called Empire Booze, and it's talking about how instrumental the British Empire was in all sorts of different parts of booze production, from gin to rum to all our different favourite wines. And it wasn't just limited to Sicilian wine in Italy. Bordeaux in particular was particularly because the English loved a really heavy style of wine. They bought claret from Bordeaux all the time. But what they used to do is they used to get Hermitage from the Rhone, ship it across to Bordeaux and pump up claret, also known as claret, which is a much lighter style of wine, by pumping it full of warmer, softer, sweeter, heavier, more intense wines from the Rhone. So Sicily weren't the only people doing this. Some of the biggest names were doing it. So it's no shade on Sicily, but they do produce a lot of wine, and that therefore there is obviously going to be a large proportion of that which is of poorer quality, just because they produce that much of it. But when you get into it, it's pretty much a guaranteed hit every single time.
Particularly with the indigenous varieties, I feel. I mean, there's lots of international varieties that have been planted in Sicily as well, and it's obviously Diego Planeta, who championed that. You know, the Planeta Chardonnay, for instance, they can sometimes be a little bit more expensive. But if you look for the indigenous, the Frappatos, the Nero d'Avolos of this world, Catarato, Grillo, Fiano, those kind of great varieties.
So much actual great stuff. When now you've started listing them, I'm like, oh, I love a Fiano. Oh, I love a Grillo.
Sicily's great for wine, absolutely.
It's a good go-to.
Yeah, this is one of my portfolios. So this is the hashtag bio. It's made by a female winemaker, as we might expect from this particular pod / live tasting. It's Maricarmen Navas, who is a Spanish winemaker from Jerez, and she graduated in biology, oenology after that, and then she landed a really cool role of making wine for quite a big Italian group called Gruppo Vino Italiano. Maybe the other way around.
Italian wine group.
Hey, there you go. But you know, they make wines all over Italy, and they are particularly a really great cooperative. So they work with loads of different farmers and then vinify the juice into really great wines. And she did little bits in Verona. She did a bit in Tuscany, and now this is one of her newest projects, which happened quite recently, using grapes that are cultivated to organic practices. Hence why you get the little flag on it. Eco-compatible material, so everything is paper, everything is recyclable. So it's really sort of like aiming at the new age of wine consumer. People obviously are very aware that the environment is important as well. And yeah, this is the newest expression of wine. Also do some Prosecco on this particular label, some Bardolino, and make a little bit of wines from all over under this particular label. Delicious, really, really good.
It is indeed. Dr. Rachel says apple and crushed lime, the tang softened by a drizzle of honey and biscuits. Yum. Love that stuff, guys. Love that. Well done. A delicious way to start the tasting. Jen, what do you think?
Good.
Okay, right. And I'm moving swiftly on.
It's not moving to wine, is it?
I know what you're talking about.
These guys, the minute they start, they leave grapes going, and all of a sudden that they're punting their own portfolios of wine. All of a sudden, wine made by other people is just all their impartiality that they work so hard to maintain out the fucking window. It's embarrassing.
I'll do a little bit about the winemaking before we crack on with the next one. Harvested the first 10th of September, which is quite late in the season. So there's some a little bit of a lengthy hang time. So ripe fruit, which definitely expresses itself in the glass, I feel. Careful checks of balance in the grapes. So, when the grapes come into the winery, there's immediately a pH test done to find out if the grapes are of a certain balance, which will mean that they then produce decent wine. So it's important that they have enough sugar levels and enough acidity within the grapes, otherwise the wine will be edible, right? We know that. Fermentation is without the skins, like I said, soft pressing as well, and then in temperature controlled stainless steel to enhance those primary aromas, and then lees aged until March. So quite some time on the lees, almost 6 months.
That texture again.
Exactly.
You can really feel
That's
that.
why Dr. Rachel's getting some biscuit because of that lees contact.
For them.
Now my little project for this was to come up with 6 different figures, female figures from the historical worlds of wine that best symbolize it. My first one is Hathor. Hathor was the ancient Egyptian goddess of motherhood, movement, music, love, emotion, and wine. And alongside the Etruscans, it's symbolized the fact that the female, the feminine, was massively integrated in the production and reverence of wine. It was a hugely important part of it. That didn't last a great deal, however, because the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans swiftly took it out of the hands of the female and all of a sudden put it very firmly in the hands of the male. And there are 2 particular characters that symbolize that. Dionysus, who was the Greek god of wine and partying and revelry, and then Bacchus, who was the Roman one. And unfortunately, that was a pretty damning double act. Whereas previously, women had been massively integrated, involved. In fact, it probably been, if you go all the way back to the Paleolithic era, females in a band would have been perhaps more hunted, would have been the more gatherer style rather than hunters. They would have harvested their grapes, perhaps pressed them, perhaps all of a sudden come along and found this frothy pot of stuff afterwards as it started to spontaneously ferment. That whole culture of females being involved in wine was taken away, and part of the reason was because the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans became incredibly wealthy from the making and selling of wine, especially once that went beyond the Mediterranean. Once people went beyond the Mediterranean and started to enjoy wine made in the Med, all of a sudden, lo and behold, women weren't involved in that process whatsoever. And they certainly weren't allowed to make any kind of profit or be involved in it whatsoever. So it seems to be just another one of those stories. But Hathor was the original goddess of wine when the ancient Egyptians were knocking about, and then the Greeks and the Romans fucked it up for the rest of them. So that was my first historical figure, important historical female figure in the world of wine. So
nice little factoids, that Tom.
Thanks very much.
Facts.
I love it. That's brilliant. Goddess of Wine has got a better ring to it than God of Wine.
So Liz and Paul says, can you unpin Lauren so you're not teeny tiny, please? If you just go to speaker, you should. Oh, maybe not. No, you're quite right.
Learn how to zoom.
It was fine on YouTube, by the way.
Learn how to YouTube.
It was just on Zoom, and if you change your gallery, move from whatever.
Production's gone downhill.
I know.
Where's the mics? Where the mic? Oh, can I have one just fake?
So I'll look interesting.
So
we'll give you and Jen microphones, and then I don't need a mic.
Production's gone.
They're not plugged in. Right, okay. On to wine number 2. This is one of the seminal figures in the world of wine, which Decanter actually specifically lists at the very, very top when they're going through their women in wine. Susanna Balbo, an absolutely crucial person, referred to as the Queen of Torontes, which before we tried this wine is a little bit like saying you're the queen of the dung heap, because Torontes is a bag of spanners, mate. I'm not going to lie, really don't enjoy it until we got a hold of this boy.
I agree with that. Not all Torontes is spanners, okay? It's like
99% of it.
It's like saying Gewurz is all terrible.
It's true.
Or the Shiraz is gross. Yeah, I understand
Exactly.
that. I'll
So-
back down from that.
She
Not
is
to my
the champion
particular
of it, but you, like you said, it's, you know, not all of it is terrible. You can't condemn a whole grape variety just because you don't like one kind of it. Case in point. Case in point.
What she
Next one.
did do was she did radically change the fortunes
Yes.
and perception of Torontes.
Yeah.
She's one of the most respected influential winemakers in the whole of Argentina. Argentina's first female enologist. And serving 3 times as the president of Wines of Argentina in a very, let's be honest, a very
Voted by her colleagues.
What's the best way to describe Argentinian culture is quite
Askew.
chauvinist.
Oh.
Put it that way, which means of one gender as opposed to it being misogynist, which obviously has negative connotations, but it is quite masculine and macho Argentinian culture, and she was the president of the Wines of Argentina 3 fucking times. So there you go. Her contributions to developing Argentina's indigenous white grape varietal Torontes given her the moniker Queen of Torontes. After almost 2 decades working for wineries in Argentina and as a consultant globally, she founded Susana Balbo Wines in Luyan de Cuyo in Argentina, in Mendoza. So here we go. Finish one, please. Finish one.
Driving a bit.
Wow.
I can only have little sips, you know. I'd rather be able to sip them all.
Okay, well, in that case.
Barry will get rid of it. No, Barry will get, as in like drink it. Oh my God, there's too many glasses.
Well, I was.
What just happened?
What a mess. Baz, I presume you want a little bit of this.
I'll do
Well,
it.
hurry the fuck.
It's fine.
It's terrible. So this is the barrel fermented Torontes. Because Torontes, I guess,
Just a
go
lot.
through for us what you think. Like, Baz,
Yes.
what would you say is the negative?
Too floral.
That's too much of a small measure.
Too small of a small.
Yeah.
It can be quite thin. Is that what we were going to ask me? The negatives.
Yeah. The negative stereotypes associated with Torontes.
It can be quite a little bit soapy almost sometimes. It can be a little bit like you know, in my grand's house, you know, she used to have like little knitted like
Doilies.
things of potpourri, and it had a certain aroma that for me it wasn't quite pleasant. You know, there's a certain aroma, and
It's not something you want to drink.
Toronto reminds me of that. It's got that real sort of like perfumey florality that is something that I don't associate with imbibing.
Quite cloying and sort of grandma-y, and a little bit fusty and dusty.
And then it can be really thin as well.
The thinness is my impression of Toronto an awful lot of the time. I'm thinking of the Amalaya stuff that we've had in that you hope was going to be great, and all of a sudden was.
That Riesling in it,
Rosé was good.
Had Riesling in it.
So.
No, it's the Amaru that you're thinking about. Yeah.
Oh,
The Amaru Swire was pretty good.
It was the swirl. That was really good.
Had just enough Toronto's in it, like 5%. But you know, for me, I've always had like, you know, an opinion about Toronto's until I tried this, and I was like, okay, Toronto. And they did this at a trade show. I was like, oh, I'm going to hate this. Because like, you know, Toronto is just not to my particular taste. And because I was in front of, I don't think it was Susana Barbo, but someone that represented the winery. And so I didn't want to come across as a complete cool.
So you felt like you had to try it?
Yeah, of course.
Like it. So you would have
Still try it.
You would have
Always try it.
You would have overlooked this, or would you have
It's
actually
one thing
tried
I
it?
always teach my children as well. Always try it.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't like it, then fine, make up your mind. But, you know, like you just said, you know, this movement, anything but Chardonnay, that hurts me.
It breaks my heart.
It breaks my heart because it's arguably the most versatile grape variety. I had a similar kind of thing with Riesling. There are good expressions out there. So I forced myself to my head to try this wine, and I was like, oh my God, because with a little bit of winemaking, that's the ethos of her signature range is minimal intervention in the winery, but then quite a little bit of manipulating in the winery to make the wine taste the way that it does, and really have still an expression of terroir underlying it all, which I think is a great ethos to have and makes it a great wine.
So, Jen, is it just the grape varietal that means that people have the perception that Toronto's is quite thin, or is it also the region, going at altitudes?
I mean, it can be everything. It can be even the winemaking, like Barry said. Everybody hated Chardonnay for a while because it was badly oaked. You know, they just hated, you know, artificially oaked wines. They didn't actually hate Chardonnay. So it goes both ways. The winemaking here is supporting the grape variety, but in other cases, the winemaking actually dragged down the grape variety, if that makes sense, by association. So there's so many factors that that can influence, you know, what happens in the glass and whether you hate it, whether you love it. One person's most favorite thing could be someone else's absolute worst nightmare. So, you know, at the end of the day, wine is subjective, but it's really important to understand why you don't like it as much as why you like something, you know.
And that's very true. It's one of those things where it's sort of hoisted by its own petard, where Chardonnay is very good at taking on the characteristics of oak.
Yeah. It's a chameleon,
therefore,
like,
people
literally.
fuck it up by adding too much oak in. Because so this is a barrel fermented Torrontés. So obviously the fermentation has happened within wood. How big of the barrels? We'll come on to that. We'll come on to that later. What is it about Torrontés you think that really lends itself to this kind of thing? Is it just because it's quite thin and therefore by barrel fermenting it, by adding in that extra texture, it has a lot of room to grow?
I didn't think it did / would. I've never seen a barrel fermented.
Because if you barrel fermented like a Viognier, which is already quite textural, would it go too far? Because the fact that Torrontés is quite thin, it's almost got. It's like buying a kid clothes that it can grow into. Do you know what I mean? It can grow into that barrel fermentation as opposed to it pushing it off into being unbalanced.
I think it could make it.
It's really a fine line.
You're losing, you know, like you said, what makes Torrontés, you know, what is kind of its signature is that florality. And I feel like maybe as people think if you do too much to it, you lose that florality, but you can see here you've still got some florals on the nose, but it's not overpowering. So I feel like maybe people didn't barrel ferment it because they didn't want to ruin Torrontés' typicity, if that makes sense. But like I said, I've never seen a barrel fermented Torrontés.
Big fan.
Thank you.
Typicity.
Thank you.
Right, okay, so we've got some tasting notes that are absolutely to die for here. The Mavses drop a little bit of grapefruit on it. So there's lovely nose, really floral, honey and blossom. Dr. Rachel says, I have so missed you guys as a trio. I've got to be honest with you. Yeah, I completely agree. We need to make this a more regular thing.
So giddy.
Oh, I know. Fucking the most frustrated man in the history of men, actually. As you rocked up and you were like, there we go.
Please, just of people.
Cat Dave, lychee and kiwi. Dave Roberts, Susie thinks jasmine, I think apple sours. Guy Price says peaches, and then follows on to say, millions of peaches, peaches for me. Millions of peaches, peaches for free.
I don't know that song. In Holland it goes a bit like this. Basic voor mij. Misschien wil je ook een basic. Dan doen we het allebei.
And Cat Dave saying, going back to number one after having tried number two, then I get a lot, and then I get some tea on the nose, which is quite fascinating. Lizzie Paul, floral peach and fruit salad, sweet. So let's have a little crack at this, Jen.
Yeah.
Dissect this bitch.
Wow. Okay, so let's have a look at the colour in the glass. Less intense in terms of colour than the previous. So it's
far less, even though it's had that barrel fermentation, so it's had some oak interaction.
Yeah.
So this is purely grape varietal.
Yeah. That lemon green, sort of like greeny highlights in there for me as well. Pop it back up to its, well, what do we say? Perpendicular. Perpendicular.
You're letting the dude who's got English as his like fourth language drop bombs on it.
I remember. Its legs, its presence in the glass, you can tell it's not going to be as textural, but it does still fall slower than I would expect.
It's a little bit weight in the glass, I think.
Yeah.
A little bit.
It's not as in, I don't think it's as weight as the first one, though, right? Sponsored by it, no.
Brought to you by
but yeah, it looks like it's going to be a lighter sort of drinking experience, but then you nose it. Wow. So it is very perfumed on the nose, very present, really, really pronounced. There are florals.
In terms of what cheese, Taleggio is the cheese to go with this one. Taleggio, creamy bird.
Nice. But yeah, I definitely get that jasmine. Whoever said jasmine, like green tea as well. A little bit of that fruit salad, sweet peachy.
You won't remember this because you are but a babe in the woods, right? A sweet summer child. Barry, do you remember?
No. What? I wasn't on
Bundaberg.
Yeah, mate, that was establishment days.
It's like this peach ginger beer from Straya. In fact, you know what, Lauren, do you remember, or did you ever try? Because they did Bundaberg ginger beer, and then they also did a lemon lime bitters, and then they did like peachy.
Was Bundaberg a thing, Lauren? I don't even.
Bandy, man.
Lauren's younger than me.
Yeah, but she lived in fucking Australia, man.
Yeah, true, actually.
Fucking good country weird, drinking fucking bandy, man.
Yeah, peaches that.
Not an acceptable response. Don't encourage it.
I'm she's Sharon Bundy. Apparently they sell Bundaberg at Somerset Garden Centre, which is the most niche reference in the history of references, Sarah.
Is it the peach one though?
No, it's not the peach one.
Because they're doing normal ginger beer,
which has got the
it's
little
nice.
wrinkle.
It's not fiery enough, but the peach one. That's unlocked a core memory. That it's like
How do you get hold of some? Because we'll make a note.
We used to make a dark and stormy with that. I remember that. Remember, used to make a dark and stormy with that in establishment.
Find some of that, please. Even if it's like 10 years old, I still have it. Yeah.
Oh, I will get you some peachy, Jennifer.
It's when we always make that yogurt, Uncle yogurt in that.
Yeah.
The Tropicalia one.
The passion fruit and manga.
I don't like the bits in it.
Right. 6 years old.
Yeah.
And then the bits in it.
You know what? And this is very personal to me.
I don't like the bits.
It wasn't the Uncle one, but we had a thing around our family table when we had a family meal. It was did the trick with the milk, and then when you finish last milk, you put the carton but in front of my dad, so my dad would reach for the milk and go, oh, it's empty. I'm like, oh, that kind of thing we did. But then after it was a carton, and it's like you couldn't see the level of the milk, so you would finish the milk, but really kind of sort of like tactically place it, and we used to get each other with it anyway.
And it just be really heavy. Like that.
Yeah. Like, so we're like, oh, let's go. It's empty. And I go, ah. Anyway, very funny. But I hope
everybody's enjoying this.
After dinner, we used to get these. I think they were cheap Aldi. Like they had these yogurt pots, and they were plastic, and they had like this little foil over the top. And they did a peach and maracuja, as we call it in Holland, passion fruit, and. Wow, that really reminds me of it. It's
probably like the baby yogurts, aren't they?
Yeah, it's like it was really cheap. So at the time, it was like 17.
Petit Baloo.
17
ones. Where you get the sixer, that's like click.
Yeah.
You click off two, and then go. I know I'm going to eat all of these. Because you go 1 scoop.
Well, yeah, that's one. That's an quarter memory for me.
Mac had 2 bagels for breakfast this morning. I was appalled. It reminded me of something you would do.
2 bagels.
2 bagels. That's a lot of bagels
on top of each other.
Did he make you eat 2 bagels?
No, he ate 2 bagels. And I didn't eat any bagels.
Right, it's actually Wednesday. Yeah, Mac.
Yeah.
Why didn't you fucking?
I can't eat more than one of one thing though.
Why didn't you limit your bagel intake so you didn't make your girl feel weird? Why didn't you do
2
that?
bagels.
Why didn't you do
I couldn't physically eat from 2 yogurt pots that were connected together. It feels illegal. That's what I'm saying. Wow, it's not right.
Guys, it's amazing to have you back. Right, okay. So
a bit of wine, Mike.
Like the wine? Yeah, let's go.
All right.
So should we taste it?
Oh,
Harry, no.
Oh yeah.
You are banned. Officially. Fucking stalled.
Wow. First of its kind, produced from grapes,
texture, vibrant, peach, a little bit of minerality,
A little bit of saline.
a little bit of texture.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good.
I would never thought I'd say this, but that's an incredible Toronto. Can I have another?
Wow.
That's amazing. So a little bit about the actual winemaking. So the signature range is pushing the boundaries of winemaking. Okay, so enhance the grape's character while preserving the terroir essence, using different fermentation vessels such as concrete, eggs, oval-shaped oak barrels, and amphora, which is terracotta pots that they carry or something. Shit. So first up is produced from the grapes from the Uco Valley, which is sub-region of Mendoza, and this is at an altitude of 1,150 meters. So that altitude has got something to do as well with the texture of the wine, for sure.
So, Jen, explain why the altitude make a difference. It's to do with the diurnal shift, right?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, the higher up you go, the cooler it gets. And an interesting thing that's happening in, a lot of parts of the world, actually, is climate change is forcing people higher up mountainside to kind of escape the heat. So, for example, in other parts of the world, in Ribera del Duero, like it's already gone up another 100 meters. They're planting 100 meters higher than they were last year just because of how hot it's getting. So they're trying to escape that, temperature.
Just to preserve their style. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not limited to just there, is it? We know for a fact that it's having an impact all over the place. Whether it's volatility of weather or in fact just general sort of increase in temperature, meaning that champagne houses now buying up land in the south of the UK, just purely so that they can try and continue to produce their style of champagne, their style of sparkling wine. They would still be able to make a champagne, but they wouldn't be able to make that particular type of champagne that everybody is now so used to.
Just now in champagne, we see a completely different way of making the wine as well. It's now reserve wines that have been aged in Solera system, which is now the base of every champagne wine. It's Louis Roeder that actually championed that, then topped up with the current vintage. But back in the day, it used to be a small percentage of reserve wine to flesh out the wines, to make them richer. But now, because the fruit's already so ripe, they need to come up with a different way of making the wine, which is absolutely fascinating. And also within Bordeaux, there's other varietals that are now allowed and Bordeaux blend, like Tinta Roriz, Tempranillo is now part of an allowed variety in a Bordeaux blend. It's just to fight global warming, and it's a sad thing in a way.
Well, that little mention of Bordeaux brings me on nicely to my second important female figure in the world of wine. So females have been essentially cut out of wine production. However, even though we're now entering the medieval period here, females were not allowed to own or be involved in the winemaking process. That doesn't mean that strong women weren't able to still make their presence felt. And one of the most strong was a lady who went by the name of Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was became the queen consort after being the duchess in her own right of Aquitaine, and her dowry when she was married to Henry II of England was basically the whole of Gascony and Bordeaux. It became part of England, and for centuries was part of England. As English kings prosecuted their claims to the French throne, usually leaving from Gascony or from Calais. Now, the dowry was incredibly valuable and brought a huge amount of wealth, and it also led to a link between that region and England that persisted throughout the centuries. The Bordelais, so the people from Bordeaux, had much more affinity to the English than they ever did to the French. And it came to a head in particular during the Napoleonic era, whereby Napoleon instituted the continental system. We were unable to take any trade goods across to England. They had to take it to Hoorn in the Netherlands by selling it to the Dutch, and then the Hoorn. Then they'd be able to sell it over there. So actually, the Bordelais rejoiced when Napoleon ended up getting beaten because they wanted to sell their wines to the English. Clarets, the Bordeaux style, was the thing that was sold most to the English, and that link that came back through Eleanor of Aquitaine led to the Bordeaux region becoming so prominent and so powerful within the world of wine. There was also something else that happened under Napoleon, which I find quite fascinating, which didn't happen in the UK. There was something called every single time that somebody died, all of their possessions had to be split equally amongst all of their offspring. Worth pointing out, all of their legitimate offspring, so none of any illegitimate offspring didn't get it, and none of the female offspring got anything either. So once again, women being shut out of the world of wine. And it's most visible in Burgundy. When you look at Burgundy, all of the little tiny slivers and plots of land that had previously were previously larger areas, they got cut down and cut down and cut down. And every single time somebody died, it had to be split completely equally by law amongst all of their offspring, which meant that we now have these tiny little slivers of vineyards. It didn't necessarily happen that much in Gascony because obviously it was owned by the English. And even at the point when it wasn't anymore, they still maintained a degree of separation. And then what then happened was then the classification and the Grand Cru system that happened, particularly in Bordeaux. But it all came from Eleanor of Aquitaine and her force of nature. She gave birth to England's greatest king, Richard I, Richard the Lionheart, Richard Cœur de Lion, and Eleanor of Aquitaine, absolutely vital figure, alongside Madame de Medici, who also was an important person. But Eleanor of Aquitaine was crucial because she brought Burgundy under English control, and that led to centuries and centuries of that combination between and the English love for claret and heavy Burgundy-style wines that persist.
Bordeaux style,
okay, not
good. Okay, but just you're confused.
Right, okay, back to the old Balbo. Jen, talk us through it. What are you saying?
It's fantastic. I absolutely adore that wine, and I'll never say it.
Baz, can you just play that?
What?
Just
No.
Just
Just
Hey,
play
do you like the branding? It's nice. I worked hard on that.
Did you do that?
I did actually, yeah. You just got to do a lot of things yourself, you know. Okay, so
I'm going to listen to
where's
it,
that
don't worry.
support network gone, you know?
Oh, God.
Oh.
Have you got a bit of
winemaking.
Let's go.
Let's do the
Well,
winemaking.
before we do that, here we go. Both sides of the vines with Jenny and Lauren. Okay, let's talk trends. There we go. It was released on March 15th. There you go. You can find it following. Look what we're doing.
True
following.
It's got a trailer.
There we go. There's a trailer. Should we play the trailer? Should we play it?
No, I'm right here. Don't do that. Listen to your own little headphones, you know. It'll be lovely.
Interesting question from Dr. Rachel. Makes you wonder whether other aromatic grape varieties could benefit from careful, deft use for oak. I'm bristling at the prospect, but this really works.
Yeah.
What other aromatic varietals do we find that use that?
Well, I think you make a very good point, but I think in this case it's so well done.
Yeah.
There is. I was literally talking about it earlier. It's a fine line here. She really is treading the line between it being overpowered. Yeah, no, it's actually safe. Yeah, and a lot of aromatic varieties will have an influence of oak, but it will usually be old oak, exactly, or larger vessels. So that it doesn't really necessarily have an oaky impact on the flavor profile of the wine, but it more stabilizes the wine and makes it a rounded drinking experience. So, like the Smaragd, so you find that a lot in Grüne Veltliners, which is usually the top level ones. You find it a lot in
Rieslings.
In Riesling, yeah, exactly. That was going to be my next sentence. Riesling production gets aged in Poudre, so 1,000-liter barrels. I'm super old, so it doesn't really necessarily rub off the oak flavor profile, because that's something that can be quite jarring if you've got an aromatic grape style.
Yeah, you lose its personality.
But this, yeah. There's it's no wonder that she's called the Queen of Torontos, because if you can make something like this is, yeah, it's absolutely fabulous. I think the texture it's super textural, really aromatic. It's still got the sort of backbone of a Torontes flavor profile. It's still very much a Torontes, but just made in a completely different style than anything I've ever tasted, and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. £30 on the shelf. At grapesgreen.co.uk. If you use IWD 30, you get 30% off. So I'll bring that down to £21 wine, which you can't fucking sleep on.
I'll buy it, man.
You cannot sleep on that.
Good wine, that. It's good wine.
Amazing.
Shall we? Are we doing some reds now, or? For me, awkward times.
When I start talking, all of a sudden, reaching a grinding halt. Right, okay. We're going to move on to wine number 3. See it off. 3, 2, 1.
Very gentle. Cheers. I can't do it.
Come on now.
Wine number 3.
Learn how to wine taste, mate.
Wine number 3 is the rather spectacular and fantastic.
I'm excited for this.
Rieder Kulm from the Kulm Vineyard.
More.
Rieder Kulm. In the Kulm Vineyard in Burgenland.
I read it as like
in Austria.
Klum first. I was like, oh, Heidi Klum. No, not Heidi Klum.
Definitely not Heidi Klum.
That's really great Halloween, actually.
Yeah. Like, wait, why is my brain doing this? No, it's not that. Definitely
this is from the Kulm Vineyard. This is the grape varietal is Blaufränkisch. Blaufränkisch, and this is by Heidi Schrock and Söhne.
Why does everything smell like yogurt today? It's ridiculous. Unbelievable.
What kind of yogurt?
Let's dissect. Yeah.
Hello.
What's up?
Bye.
So obviously we're talking red wine in this case. So there'll be other things to look out for on the appearance of the wine. So in this case, I would class this as ruby red with a little
purple.
Yeah,
little purple around the rim.
Oh man, we import. We'll do this on another tasting, which is a producer called Kiniger. They are from Spain, as most of them all wines are. But it's an Austrian winemaker who's planted indigenous Austrian varieties. Yeah, mate, listen to this. So Schweigold and Blaufränkisch, that's a blend.
In Spain?
Yeah. And I opened the bottle of wine at the bar show, and because it's nutty, it's completely unfiltered.
What was that? What did it look like?
You've not tried it. It's I opened the bottle of wine, not even looking. You know, it's like la 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 la. You know, you're talking to like my hands were covered in like tannins. It's so expressive. Blaufränkisch has actually got a real expressive color coming from the skins of the grape.
But this is really deep and intense in color, and really, really super appealing. I've got to is this variety because I just wasn't expecting somewhere with the cooler climes of the Niederösterreich produce a wine this weighty and potent?
Have a little nose of it. It's still super fresh, and it's also got to do with the cool climate. So if you plant this in a hotter climate, it becomes a lot riper, it becomes a lot heavier. But this is idiosyncratic Austrian red wine. Schweigel, Blaufränkisch are the varietals that we mostly talk about. And it's incredibly perfumed. There's beautiful color to it.
Yeah.
It's got, again, weighty legs, but not staining at all. So the tannin structure on this is going to be velvety. It's going to be soft. It's going to be juicy. This could be slightly chilled down as well. It's breaking the glass every single time.
Like, I've got to be honest with you, I'm expecting, like...
Do you know what I mean, though?
He's having a smashing time, as Barry.
Right, let's have a little look at the legs. So they are relatively weighty, but they're not staining at all. On the nose, it's an absolute explosion.
It really goes for it, right? It really goes for it. Jen, is that classic Blaufränkisch? Blaufränkisch, a very aromatic red varietal?
I've only tried maybe 2 in the past. It's not something that I would consider myself well versed in. All right, how many Blaufränkisch have you tried, Barry?
3.
We knew it was coming and it didn't make it first. Yes. Sarah says initially earthy and mushroomy, but then the strawberry smell starts to come through. That is a really good thing. The strawberry it does have a nice jamminess to it, a nice fresh strawberry jam.
Again, it's cherry yogurt for me, guys. I don't know what it is. It's like, am I missing yogurt in my diet or something? It's like, do I need to eat more yogurt? My body telling me, yo,
I was at a tasting the other day, and all I could smell for all of them and taste was just cherry. Everything. I was like, am I broken? I was going to say cherry again. I was like, I can't say cherry again. Because you've got, black cherry, red cherry, flat cherries, cherry yogurt. So, like, as we always say, like, drill down into it. Is it just cherry, or is it, what kind of cherry is it? Because I was doing it. I felt myself just going, everything tastes like cherries. But yeah, what kind of cherry is it?
I find this really cherry. I find this really primary aroma driven. But if you look a little bit closer to this wine and really focus on the tertiary and secondary and tertiary aroma profiles, you get a little bit of that potting soil. You get a bit of that sort of like dirt under your fingernails, as you describe it.
Sarah Carver's called it. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a little bit of truffle. There's a little bit of...
The Kehoe is getting a little bit of the eucalyptus nose with some red fruit. Lizzie and Paul with some great taste in that. Stewed plums and vanilla on the nose. Black pepper silkiness on the palate. Delicious.
Yeah, there is a little bit of spice as well.
What cheese? The cheese with this one is the Gruyere.
Did you not find an Austrian cheese? No.
Oh, yeah, all of that Austrian cheese.
Smells great.
Hang on. Let me just check that. Oh, sorry, Austrian cheese falling out of my pocket.
I've run out of Austrian cheese.
Wow.
It's aromatic though, eh?
I'm excited to taste it. I don't know what the
Why don't you
tannins
go
are
ahead then,
like.
Jen? Why don't you taste it?
I'm thinking the tannins could be quite prominent, and you know my opinion on tannins. I'm scared of them.
I'm scared of tannins.
No, they're all right.
Okay.
I mean, they're there.
I don't know why I doubted Heidi,
They're definitely there.
Do you want to do a little overview of Heidi's career, or do you want me to do it?
You go for it, mate.
Okay, so pioneered the role of women in Austrian viticulture. She voted Vintner of the Year multiple times, led the organization dedicated to promoting female winemakers, which resulted to an increase of women working in the Austrian wine industry, which is amazing. She took over a 10-hectare family estate in the 1980s, 83 to be exact, in Rust in Burgenland, 5 miles from the Hungarian border, which is actually quite unique. So she's right near a lake.
Does she actually produce a Tokai as well?
No, she put a ferment. So ferment will be a great variety.
Tokai, but the ferment that's just come
it's actually an Austrian variety that, because she's so close to the Hungarian border, that it actually trickles its way into Hungary. A famous wine being Tokai, which goes for noble rot. It's a completely different style of wine. But Furman is the grape variety, and she 100% blew a new lease of life in it to produce Austrian Furman, the spiritual home of Furman, which is quite interesting.
She also does the Junge Löwen, which is the Blaufränkisch Saint Laurent.
This is the
other
way.
Also, that she also does a Zweigelt as well, and then this is just the straight Blaufränkisch as well.
Not just the straight Blaufränkisch. This comes from old Weinmatter, like 50 years old, planted by a great aunt. So it's now called Heidi Schrock and Sohne, which means, and her sons. She's got twin sons, Johannes and Georg, who help.
It's a very noble sounding name. That.
Johannes, very lekker name. Completely sustainably farmed. It's all the right buzzwords. And any wine that I've tasted from this
Her
house,
ranges, yeah.
maison, anything that I've tasted from her is quality.
There's not like a
Absolutely
flop, is
amazing.
there? They're all, every single time we taste one from her, it's like, yeah, that's banging. Yeah, that's banging. Yeah, that's banging.
So the oldest vines that were planted in 1955. So the actual lake that she was on is the Neusiedl Lake. So that creates like an amphitheater. So her vineyards are sort of southeast facing, then you've got that sort of reflecting effect from the vineyard. So it gets the most sunlight hours in the whole of Austria. So her fruit is a lot riper, which means that she actually champions red varieties. Yeah, absolutely amazing. I don't think, does she produce a Gruner? I don't think she does. I think she just champions red varieties and a bit of Vernon.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it's incredible. Go on. Do you want to dissect?
I was going to say one thing that I did come across the other day that I not really thought of, like you said when you were talking about buzzwords, old vines, sustainably farmed, not all vines are meant to be old in a way. So we always think old vines,
Always better.
Always better. Not always the way.
Mm.
So for example, like when you're going into South Africa and people are ripping up Sauvignon Blanc vines, it's not because it's not, it isn't the most trendy thing to plant in South Africa anymore, but it's also because old Sauvignon Blanc vines, for example, are not actually the best, the best business decision. But I've always thought old vines means better fruit, higher concentration, but not all vines are created equally.
For people at home, if you see Viñas Viejas or Vievine or old vines, what my point, I guess, is that if they're taking the time to put old vines on the bottle as winemakers, then that means the old vines are doing something important. And that isn't necessarily where you have to have this encyclopedic knowledge like these guys about wines. Go, well, the wines are quite old on this. If they're taking the time to say these are old vines, it means that wine is probably benefiting from the fact they're older vines as opposed to it being an impediment.
Yeah.
So if they're taking the time to write it, then that means something.
But I just thought it always meant better.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I did as well. But
because when I hear people picking up vines, I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing? They could be old vines. No, it doesn't. Not everything actually benefits.
It's great. It's varietal expressive, isn't it? Something like that. There's an aromatic variety, like something like a Sauvignon Blanc, actually probably the prime example. Exactly, because the Sauvignon Blanc consumer, drinker, wants that racy acidity. It wants that sort of like idiosyncratic, like passion fruit, tropicalia kind of flavor profile. But when the vines get old, they actually lose that. For me personally, you tried aged Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah,
it's not
great.
It's for the consumer.
Yeah,
that's not what they're looking for. No. But for me, aged Sauvignon Blanc is actually a better drinking experience because it's softened and
concentrated.
More concentrated. Yeah. Exactly.
I guess there's some sort of analogy or some kind of allegory that can be made within other stuff that we're familiar with, like other stuff that we eat and drink, right? So if something can be eaten old, like for example, a cherry can be eaten old because it can be conserved and preserved in a jam or something like that, then that's maybe something that might benefit from an old vine, but you wouldn't go necessarily for an old, but like an old flower. It doesn't have the vibrancy of a young flower, and so that florality is what you're
dried
looking
flower,
for.
which is a different. So think about a rose petal,
but that's 100% not what you're looking for. If you want that fresh, vibrant, of a freshly picked flower or freshly cut grass or freshly whatever that you would associate with more youthful aromatic wines, that's not going to benefit from being like old. Cut grass is not a pleasant smell. It smells like rotting grass, right? So if your wine is going to smell or going to express itself as freshly cut grass, that doesn't want to be old either in vine form or in wine form. If it shines best when it's fresh, it's not necessarily going to benefit from being an older version of that.
Yeah, but it's just I never thought about it.
No, I never did either. That's really good.
But then it makes way. I'm sorry about we're on a tangent now, but yeah, it just made me. When you said buzzword, it is a buzzword because old doesn't always mean better.
It's really peppery on the palate. This, by the way.
Well, I've got
very savoury.
The Prousers have just dropped the best tasting that ever, which goes completely in the face of that. Which is Muller Corner banana and chocolate flakes.
Yogurt.
Nice. Yogurt.
The yogurt.
The
yogurt.
I don't know. Do I need to eat more yogurt? Is that it? Do I need to drink kefir? They make like cherry kefir. It's like all gutty.
It's so nice.
It's like,
I love gut health.
There's a probiotic, isn't it? So it gets your gut biome blooming.
I do have to admit that after I've had a mouthful of it on the nose now, it's completely different. It's more spicy. It's more earthy. It's very interesting wine. I absolutely, and I don't mean that as in like, oh, I'm on the fence about it. I really, really enjoyed it. I think slightly chilled down could be a really great summertime wine.
So I would be very anxious about chilling this down because the tannins are quite pronounced.
You think? Oh, I find it really juicy.
Juicy than I thought it was going to be.
The way that I'm tasting this, at least. So I think chilling it down would then leave us with perhaps those tannins being slightly overwhelming. What do you think, Jen Flex?
Perhaps. Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah. So, like, essentially, when you're chilling something down, you're losing that fruitiness, and you really kind of, especially with Reggie, those tannins become stronger. So, I think I'm probably on your side. Like, the tannins would become prominent, and I'd lose a lot of what I like about this wine. But it's definitely fruitier than I thought it was going to be. You know, it's it's lovely. Medium bodied, relatively short finish as well. I was expecting it to be, like I said, I was expecting it to be grippier. I was expecting a little bit of that more. There is a pepperiness there, but I was expecting it to be very much kind of just ground, you know, black pepper, spicy, dry. But it's something that's, like I said, this is my third Blaufränkisch. Let's go.
Here's one of the winemaking that I wanted to discuss with you.
Let's go.
Okay? Because there's going to be two wines on the tasting today. The Red Queen goes for a similar production method, and which I thought was quite interesting actually. So it gets harvested, quickly transported to the winery. We know all that is to preserve the aromas. Destemmed, transferred into still. Now here, a small percentage is remaining whole bunch, and they place that in the bottom of the fermentation vessel. And then the rest is all must going on the top of it. So there are some whole bunches which are ferment that way, which is the same way that, so in the Red Queen is actually more amplified. To do a third whole bunch in the bottom of the fermentation tank, and then the rest is all destemmed on the top. Why do you reckon that is? Not to put you on the spot, but just like this discussion is.
I listened to the majority of what you just said. No kidding.
Moving on to the Algoru, which is the marionette monster.
Before we move to the is there anything you'd like to say in response to that?
No, it's all good. But you said they're doing the same but different, basically. So in this case, it's going at the bottom, and the other one is going at the top.
No.
Does that make a difference?
So no, same. So they do a whole bunch. So on the actual stems in the bottom, and then the rest is all destemmed on the top. What difference will that make? What do you think? It was like I was reading it. I was like,
it sounds like a trick question.
Well, okay, there you go.
Fuck off.
Oh, the plant stem growth, biology 2 by Learning. Part A across.
So the third historical female figure in the world of wine that I'd like to mention is maybe the one that most people would jump to immediately when talking about female figures in the world of wine historically, and that is Madame Balbe Nicole Ponsardin Picot, also shortened to the Veuve or Widow Picot. She was an absolutely seminal figure in wine, and part of the reason why she was so important in the world of wine, I'll let Barry come into because he is our resident champagne expert. But what I do find quite fascinating is, and again, it comes down to that what would you call it? I guess the Napoleonic Code would be quite a good way to describe it, because it basically
I don't know what that means.
I was going to say
it removes women from their ability to be much more than pawns in sort of marriage games, right? Like
like the Hunger Games.
It's kind of, but basically the only way that, because a woman couldn't inherit, right, under the Napoleonic Code, a woman couldn't inherit, right? So the only way that a woman had of becoming a landowner,
marrying into it.
No.
Oh.
Close. The only way she had, the only way that she had of actually having any kind of property of her own, because she couldn't inherit.
Right.
It's very difficult for her to have then the capital to buy. She couldn't. Very difficult then to build. So the only way to do it was to become widowed. So be married.
I was going to jokingly say kill your husband, but then I was like, I'm going to say that.
So what would you would either be a either a spinster or the last person that could possibly inherit something, but eventually, although begrudgingly, they'd be like, fine, I guess you can have it. Age 85, you're going to die in a couple of years anyway. Or to be married to a man, not then have any kind of offspring that could then inherit, who would then become sort of who would then take precedent, but would then have your husband die and would therefore be able to take control of it as the widow. So she's known as Veuve Clicquot, one of the most famous brands in the world. she did some pretty spectacular things. But for me, one of the biggest things she did was in a completely male-dominated, and when we say male-dominated, people might think there are modern corollaries to that. But actually, when we say male-dominated, like there was nothing that wasn't owned, operated, and controlled by men at this time. So for Madame Nicole Ponsardin-Clicquot to all of a sudden go, no, fuck this. I'm going to take control of this. And not only that, to then revolutionize the champagne industry and to create it basically as it is now, to create the mass production of clear wine, therefore making it more palatable and attractive on the foreign stage. It wouldn't have happened without her. And I'll let you talk about Riddling in just a little second. But what that did was it created this kind of character, and this character was the plucky. And it's a bit of condescension going on here, but the plucky widow then became somebody quite famous and quite sort of hailed and lauded within particularly French wine, because what immediately came after the Veuve Clicquot was Louise Pommery. She was the first woman to ever produce. Part of your portfolio, right? The first woman to ever produce a brut style of champagne. It was the brut style of champagne that the English loved, therefore drove the market for it. We didn't like the riche or sweeter demi-sec style of champagne. The English demanded a brut style, and Pommery was the first. Louise Pommery was the first to do that. Right.
An opportunity there, didn't she?
Exactly. Lily Bollinger within champagne was also crucial as well, because she was an absolute tower of marketability, and was the first to really pioneer marketing within the world of wine. She was very famously quoted as saying, "I drink champagne when I'm happy and when I'm sad. Sometimes I drink it when I'm alone. When I have company, I consider it obligatory. I trifle it when I'm not hungry and drink it when I am. Otherwise, I never touch it unless I'm thirsty," which is the greatest line in the history of anything. And then we've got Madame, her name was Anne-Marie Ambal, which we will be trying later on, the Veuve Ambal, who took over. She was born in 1859. She married aged 20, a chap who went by the name of Antoine Émile Ambal. He fucking promptly died in 1898. And at her husband's death, Marie turned to a native village of Rouly in Bourgogne, where her brother still lived. He was an owner and merchant of Burgundian wines. Marie was interested and decided to create her own maison in 1898. So unlike Madame Veuve Clicquot, unlike Louise Pommery, unlike who was the other one that I was talking about just then? Say, Tom, I'm an idiot. Lily Bollinger, she didn't inherit a pre-existing enterprise.
She started it.
The Veuve Ambal, she started that shit. She decided in 1898, I think I'm going to fucking do this, and then actually created and started.
With a little help of her brother.
With a little help of her brother.
With a little help of her brother.
It's her brother is
wine merchant. Yeah.
Her brother is nothing's named after.
No.
But that partly has to do with this idea of the plucky widow who made something of it because she was taken out of the possibility of inheriting anything. The only way she had of doing something was by her husband dying, and then she made a fucking good go of it. And there is a condescension there, like despite being a woman, she managed to actually make it a success, and that, I tell you, is really quite something. But if you take the condescension away, why was Madame Veuve Clicquot that important to the world of wine buying? Because what she did was genuinely revolutionary, and is the reason why we drink champagne the way that we drink it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's clarifying the champagnes, and quite a really clever way of doing it as well, by moving the yeast from one end of the bottle. So champagne is made to alcoholic fermentation, one to make the base wine, and then gets bottled, and then they add yeast and sugar and grape juice to start off the fermentation again. And the byproduct of fermentation is lees. After the yeast have eaten all the sugars, they turn into sediment, and they will stay in the bottle. She didn't like when the wine was poured that it came out cloudy. So she came up with the really clever way of taking the yeast out of the bottle without spoiling the wine. And that was by slightly moving the wine every single day. The cellar master had to turn the bottle and put it slightly upwards. So literally, I've been to the cellars of Veuve Clicquot, and there's a table there. I've been. And there's loads of holes drilled into this table where the wines fit in really snugly, and they get turned every single day. Obviously, nowadays it's all done by Giraud palette, which is less romantic way of taking the.
They look like Transformers.
They do, yeah. Optimus Prime.
I've not seen
It
it.
is time to wriggle them.
Even there.
No, it was an English
Not yet,
winery.
not yet.
It was an English winery, but they still had the big Giro palette. So it's
No one
like
cares about English wine. So
everybody cares about
joking.
English wine.
I'm joking. I'm from Holland. In Holland, we make wine too, but it's shit. Anyway, not only did she champion clarifying the wines of Champagne by moving the yeast from one end of the bottle to the other end and then disgorging it by freezing it. Don't forget that this all happened in like the 1700s or something like that. It's like a long time ago. For someone to come up with that is relatively mind blowing. But then she also came up with the way of making rosé the way that we do it nowadays, by maceration of the skins of the grapes, leaving it in there to make it slightly tainted pink. Because back in those days, a lot of vignerons used to they used to import an elderflower liqueur that came from the Alps that was pink in color. But guess what it made the wine taste like elderflower. Exactly. It didn't taste like champagne anymore. She was like, I love the color of this. I don't like the flavor of it. How can I get this color into my champagne and still make it taste like champagne? It's like by leaving the skins in, by maceration, 3 to 6 hours to bleed that color into the wine, which I think is.
It's funny, this book that I read recently, it talks an awful lot about adulteration of wine and how common it was, and the issue between the Bordelais adulterating their wine before they sent it to England, or them not adulterating it, and then just the wine merchants in England adulterating it when they fucking got it there anyway. And one of the things that they did an awful lot was putting in these kind of really potent in color and potent in flavor, berry cordials and stuff like that. They just sling that shit in there because the English didn't really know. They just like really heavy, powerful, potent wines. And so whatever, as long as it looked right, as long as it tasted good, they literally said, if we don't fuck around with it now, when it gets to London, they're just going to fuck around with it there anyway. And I think that's just hilarious. No matter what, when it arrived on in the glasses of the English nobility, there it was already a super adulterated wine. And now in a time where we're so concerned about provenance and authenticity and all the rest of it.
Bottled at Chateau done here, but like it was coming in barrels. You know what I mean? You weren't buying a bottle, you were buying a barrel. That was it.
That is a really very good point as well. Yeah, absolutely.
You could mess around with it easier.
People bought a barrel and then they decanted it into a decanter at the point where they were drinking it.
That's where your wine merchants would do that and distribute it.
But like you wouldn't buy a bottle and then lay it down to let it sort of improve. You'd have a barrel, you'd put it into a decanter at the point when you were serving it.
At your country house and be like, I'll just get it from the barrel, it's fine.
That was actually because the glass was too weak, and it was an Englishman as well who was crucial in creating the glass that was strong enough. I forget his name.
Christopher Merritt.
No, Christopher Merritt was not the guy that did it. The guy was part of the founder member of the Royal Society, and he was an industrialist. And at the time, all of the timber was needed to try and either build naval power, build ships, right, or just was just too valuable. And so what they started to do is like, this is bollocks. Hang on, wait a second. I reckon I can use coal. And so used coal to make the glass.
Fire.
The glass was the fire was hotter. The glass was stronger. And therefore, it was able to survive the pressure of secondary fermentation and things like that. And then
so interesting.
It is absolutely fascinating. I've been writing a history of gin with a view to that. Then growing arms and legs and becoming a history of all this kind of stuff. And there's a book called Empire of Booze by a guy called Henry Jeffreys, which is absolutely amazing. I heartily recommend you all get a little look at it. It's on Audible if you want to listen to it as well. But it is fascinating. It reveals some unbelievable facts. Unbelievable facts. Dr. Rachel says Madame Clicquot should be in the Girl Power Hall of Fame. VC, so Veuve Clicquot Brut Champagne rocks. There we go.
I agree. Very, very good house. But when I visited there, even there, just normal. As another sort of thing, sort of like focusing on quality. A lot of the big maisons or the big champagne houses, they would produce a vintage every single year. I think it was the last decade that Veuve Clicquot only ever produced 3 vintages, which means that they handpicked the best vintages for them to then say, okay, we can declare this year a vintage because this is worthy of the quality of fruit that this vintage has produced.
They could have easily produced one.
Yeah, they could have done one every year, not lose a massive market stake in the actual market of selling wine, which says something about the sort of values of the company.
So there's a little thing that I wanted to just mention just about that.
Go for the win. Great house, Pinot Noir dominated. Let's go. Love it. What's your favourite champagne? Let a booth no one. Lallier.
I didn't say anything.
I've lost my little thing of
Ah,
facts.
no one cares, mate. So yeah, shall we crack on with wine number 4?
Really
So
cool.
hey, this is a wine from the Morgaro portfolio. It's by a great winery called Ego Bodegas. They're based in Umea in South Spain. And guess what? What grape varieties do they champion? 85% of the plantings in this region is
Monastrell.
It is Monastrell. Dissect the wine, please, Jen. Dissect my wine. Go.
So inky. It is inky.
Prez inky.
It's absorbing a lot of the light in the room.
It's not very staining tannins, though, right?
No, but you've got that lovely sort of that little window of the wine that I always say around the outside. It's pretty bright, so it's not as deep and purple and intense as you'd expect.
It's also markedly different because they didn't have that clear halo around the edge when it came to the Blaufränkisch.
Yeah.
But it definitely does with this. There was purple in the Blaufränkisch, whereas this one is much, much lighter.
Yeah. But
in the centre of it, maybe a little bit deeper.
It is definitely deep. I mean, for this one for me, it does have that like chocolate cherry thing again. I keep picking up cherry, chocolate cherry yogurt.
Cherry yogurt.
It's like chocolate and cherries and a little bit like Dr. Pepper and cherry powder and it's there.
There's almost like a medicinal quality to it.
I was going to say sarsaparilla, but then I couldn't remember if that was an English word or
is
it root beer? Yeah, so. It's got that like medicine-y sort of thing to it.
There is a medicinal kind of character to your own.
There's a bit of Syrah in there as well, right?
Yeah, just the right amount for you, 40%. So you're gonna hate this.
That's a bit much for Tom, actually.
That's a lot. This.
Oh,
appreciate you being.
I was going to say 4.
It reminds me of macaroons. It's got like an almondy kind of
coconut.
Is it coconut or almond in macaroons?
Coconut. Cherry Bakewell.
I'm sure it's almonds.
Cherry Bakewell's got almonds in it.
Because it's macaroon and macaron, which is different.
Macaron are the French.
That's almond.
They can be any flavour. Macaroons are shredded coconut.
Yeah. There's a nuttiness on the side.
Cherries.
Vanilla. There is earthiness. It's quite layered. Sorry, I'm taking over from you. Please.
It's cherries. I can only say cherries.
Jen's broken, so I'm going to take over. It's like a record that keeps going.
Sponsored by Cherry.
Cherries.
Now, but this, I think the story, and particularly because of the subject today, the female winemaker, and is only 26 years old, and she spearheads this organization, and they're actually quite a big producer now, quite a big player in Umea as well. So they're near Murcia in South Spain. These guys, they only started off in 2011. They've not got a rich sort of like family history about it. They started with a clean slate, but that means that they are, sort of like driving the business forward with a state-of-the-art winery with a young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed winemaker was in the winery there. Her sort of typical day is in the morning she comes in, she checks the vineyard, she checks the quality of the fruit, then she goes into the winery, she checks, she's literally overseeing the whole operation. 26-year-old, this girl, absolutely sensational.
There's some synergy there with the story of Elena Brooks actually as well. From Dandelion. Also, again, in her mid 20s, all of a sudden taking on this huge responsibility.
Her career started when she was 12, mate. It's like I've got some serious stories about her, and we met her. Remember that? It's like a long time ago. That seems now when we did a meet the maker with Elena, and we sat there till 3 a.m. doing a recording with her, and then you had to chop and change it, and that's how you got bald, right? Like, that was amazing to see.
No, that was trying to shoot the How to Taste Wine video. Do you remember when we?
Oh my God!
Mac was directing, and he was just like. Exactly. Barry was like. I wrote a whole script out, right, and you're gonna have it so it was on an iPad, right, and so as you were talking, it would hear you and it would move it up. And so I was like, "Hello and welcome for How to Taste."
No, you can't script Barry. It doesn't work. Like it feels, yeah, exactly.
Anyway, the winemaker in this question is Irene Gomez, and she looks after the whole winemaking aspect of this incredible bodega. recently I've just had this news this week that the 38 barrels, which is that top end wine, has just received best in its class out of 50 different wines who won the gold medal. She's down to the last 9 for a Spanish producer. That's an absolutely amazing achievement. Funny enough, 2 days ago I was drinking that wine and it was just juicy and fruity, just absolutely amazing. 97 points I got in the decanter. This is called the Marionette, which is not necessarily part of the El Goru range, which is the other range that they produce, which is almost like their signature blend.
Mm-hmm.
This is a slightly lighter style of Monastrell Syrah blend, just from the best plot still. Manual harvest, fermentation, and maceration is actually quite lengthy, up to 24 days, which is long for fermentation. That's why you're going to get a little bit of tannin structure in this wine. A bit more of a serious wine.
It's balanced though, one thing doesn't overtake the other. It's
winning.
It's winning. So would you say this is their entry level? Is that what you're saying to me? Because this is a whole new range for me.
No, there's 2 different ranges. So Ego Bodegas produced the Algora range, which is the hairy hermit.
Yeah.
I don't think you've tried any of these wines. I should show you some of these because they're actually fantastic wines. And this is a complete side project of the bodega. This is producing an entry level Monastrell Syrah blend that rivals the sort of Algora sort of like prestige.
I want to say
range.
because it's not a simple wine for me. It's complex. It's do you know the retail on this one?
So this on the shelves is 21 quid.
This is pre-discount.
Pre-discount, 21 quid.
Buy a load of it.
Put that price up because
Buy a load.
I didn't expect. I was, because when you go in and not necessarily knowing exactly, obviously, what price it is, I didn't check on the website beforehand. I'm sorry. It's almost like a better way to taste the wine, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Taste it, and then it's like, what's the price? Like, oh my god, really?
60 What the fuck? Who's charging 60 quid for that? Well, the people that sell it originally, mate.
But if you said this is
a 20 pound bottle of wine.
Yeah.
If you use IWD 30, you get 6 quid off this wine.
If you said to me that's like upwards of 30 quid, I would have been like, yeah, no, fair.
Yeah.
That's
I've got to be honest with you, a big reason why it does that, and this is entirely subjective, granted, but the way the bottle looks is fan-fucking-tastic.
Yeah.
And it's funny, when we were doing our research for it, and we were looking on Barry's Morgan Row website, the bottle design on there is fucking boom.
But no, with regards to the actual...
And so when I was looking at the price that we paid for it, and when I was looking at the bottle design on yours, I was like, this is going to be some fairly entry-level stuff. Now, the price, it belies the fact that it's a really, really tasty wine, and it looks class as well.
How much of a difference does it make for the label?
Well, I mean, it's funny. I'd love to hear from you guys at home, actually, because you're the people that purchase wine, and the idea that people don't purchase wine with their eyes is fucking ludicrous.
You do.
How many times have we tried to convince somebody to buy this great wine, but it looks like a bag of spanners because it's some old Bordeaux castle on it, or it's some whatever.
I think Bordeaux wasn't said. It's Italian wine. That
old Chianti. It looks fucking weird, and you're like, this wine's amazing, and
there's a resistance there, isn't there?
Obviously, because it looks meh. So you're like, well, I'm not going to bother, right? But actually, it's incredible. Whereas this, if it looks good, it's an easier sell to get people to try it. Some lovely tasting notes. David Roberts of Northern Lights fame, dark cherry, a little bit of leather, and frangipane.
There you go, almond.
Sarah Cartledge is taking umbrage at your use of the word yogurt, and therefore is going off-piste by saying cherry souffle. Liz and Paul, aniseed, and all the cherry. So there you go, back it up again there.
I've got a cool story about Monastrell. Firstly, it's 85% of all the vineyards that are planted in this region is Monastrell, right? So there's not much room for anything else. We do another really great wine. Now, did we do this on the test in the Caravan Tomb? We did, didn't we? Which makes some
Garnacha.
Yeah, makes some really incredible Garnacha. So you see a little bit of Garnacha, but there's hardly any white grape varieties that are produced in this region. But
why would you?
Exactly. This is the champion variety of this region. However, you also find it in a very famous wine called the Chateauneuf du Pape. It's called the Mourvèdre over there. Do you know what they call it over in Australia?
Lauren, what do they call Mourvèdre in Australia? I know. Do you know?
I forgot. She said it before. It's the wine that she's made.
She's still here. Anyway,
I can't remember. My brain is just gone entirely blank.
What is the guy? What is a bullfighter also known as?
Cabernet.
Matador.
A matador.
The weekend.
So it's called.
Mataro.
Mataro.
Jesus.
Well, you know how we've got to the name of Mataro? This is some.
My brain is like.
It was an English guy who traveled from Europe to Australia and took loads of vegetation from the old world over to the new world and replanted things over there. So he picked up
something called a Wardian box, which is a fascinating thing.
What?
He picked up monostral grape varieties from a town in Spain called Mataro. He took it over to Australia. When he got there, people were asking, "Oh, so what is that then?" Like, it's picked up from Mataro, so they called it Mataro. But it's the monostral grape variety. I thought that was fascinating.
That is interesting, actually.
Also, a nice synergy with the fact that the Barossa Valley is named after the Battle of Barossa, a battle fought during the Napoleonic War
in Spain.
Yeah. Like this.
You came here for the wine, but you're staying for the facts. Oh, is it? Okay. Tell us another great story about a female. Okay. So let's move on to wine number.
So another really important figure who's also a fucking badass, right? She was the first female winemaker in the Napa Valley, and her name is Hannah Weinberger. Right, so the modern Napa wine industry started in about the 1960s.
Is that for real? Like the Hamburglar?
Hannah Weinberger. So modern winemaking happened in about the 1960s in Napa, but been viticulture there since the 1880s. We were talking, I remember recently about was it Louis Martini? And there were sort of Spanish immigrants that were arriving, and we were talking about the Pearl and all that kind of stuff.
Lots of Italian influence.
Massive.
That's why they drink loads of exactly.
But Weinberger's husband, Hannah Weinberger's husband, was John, and he was shot dead in March of 1882, which is pretty peak, kind of like, pick up the gun. We're gonna have a shoot. So like
the face off.
So he died in 1882 because he was shot dead. As she took control of the winery, filled his role as director and director of the Bank of St. Helena, right? In 1889, she crossed the Atlantic to appear in the World's Fair in Paris as the only California female vintner to win a silver medal in the wine competitions. She was pretty fucking badass. No one really knows what happened about her when she was young. Knew she came from Ohio. She married John in 1871, and the Weinberg property grew to up to 35 acres before John was murdered by a disgruntled employee who'd been making unwanted advances to their daughter, Minnie. A
lot of those things back in the day, you mentioned the Paris global fair. Loads of incredible brands that we know nowadays that were presented there. I think Bacardi's one of them. I think the light bulb was one of them, right? And like those kind of things used to get presented. It's like, look, I've made an invention. I've made
just go
liquid from grape juice and makes you lekker. It's amazing.
There is another lady that I'd like to mention that goes alongside Hannah Weinberger. Her name is Isabel Simi. In the early 1900s, she was a teenager when her father and uncle died from influenza. At only 18 years old, she took over her family's estate. She took the responsibility to carry on her family's legacy as winemakers and traveled the country promoting her vineyards. The thing that makes Isabel Simi so important is that she managed to navigate prohibition. Prohibition obviously meant that it was also known as the 18th Amendment. The Volstead Act, the noble experiment whereby all recreational consumption of alcohol was made illegal. It led to all sorts of prohibition. Led to all sorts of different. The only winemakers that were allowed to continue making wine were people making wine for the sacrament. The sacrament is the body and blood of Christ in Catholicism. Here's a bit of bread, it turns into Jesus's body as it's in your mouth, called transubstantiation. It's fucking ridiculous. And then drinking wine all of a sudden becomes the blood of Jesus Christ. Once you drink it, transubstantiation.
Well, Sagaccio was one of those producers, wasn't it?
In 1919, there were 256 wineries in California. 19 years later, only 50 survived, and Simi's was one of them. She worked around the ban on recreational alcohol by using her license to produce sacramental wine, also kept producing wine for general consumption, and was ready to sell as soon as prohibition ended. She was a woman of business. She kept roses, kept a rare species of rose at her vineyard, which I really like. She planted a new bush with every president that arrived and started their presidency, apart from Henry Hoover, because of his strict enforcement of prohibition. He sent her a rose bush, and she sent it back.
Absolutely.
Fucking yeah, that's right. She said she was like, hey listen, baby girl, hey listen, baby doll, take my rose bush. Don't be so uppity, she. And she was like, take your rose bush and shut up your fucking ass now, right? I want your fucking rose bush. You're a knobhead. You made my life really fucking difficult, which I think was quite badass. So well done to Isabel Simi and Hannah Weinberger, who also kicked ass. Dr. Rachel said, would make a great tasting. Battle of your label phobia. So many gems behind those boring European labels. We have thought about in the past doing like a blind tasting. That might be something that's quite interesting to do. So you don't see the bottle, you don't see this, you just have the liquid.
If you take one of the senses away,
which feels
such a different tasting experience, isn't it? It's like, you know, when you don't see the bottle and you just get a liquid poured in front of you.
Price, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And we toyed with it, but there was never much pull for it. And we tried to do it in stores, like, we'll do a blind tasting and we'll get people to do a quiz kind of element. And maybe something that we should revisit because it is quite.
I mean, people essentially do a blind tasting every time they're doing one of these things.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. But then next time maybe we don't reveal the extra wines.
Perhaps.
My God, we will explore it.
Shall we do that? Right, okay. Kate is already talking about her favourite wine. Split decision in our house.
Go on, then.
Fourth glass number 2, husband on his third glass of number 4. So, is there anything else that you'd like to mention in regards to this? No, you are definitely a passenger on this one. And Barry, anything else you'd like to mention?
Well, obviously,
you
my.
Any more?
No. I've actually got a.
Nobody cares.
No. Listen, my favourite wine on this is actually the Toronto's.
So let's have a 1, 2, 3.
We were doing that.
Should we do 1, 2, 3?
No.
Jen, what's your 1, 2, 3?
This one. And then 4, 2, 3, 1.
4, 2, 3. 4, 2, 3.
Sorry.
It's Jen's 1, 2, 3. Barry, what's yours?
2, 4, 3.
2, 4, 3. I'm going to agree with Jen and say 4, 2, 3. Could very easily have been 2, 4, 3. I've got to be honest with you. But I'm going to go 4, 2, 3. I'm really enjoying this, Marion.
Nothing wrong with that agree, by the way. Yes.
Well, Lala completely agrees with you because she's got 1, 4, 3.
There you go.
Sarah Carter's gone 2, 4, 3. Kat has gone 4, 2, 1. Dave's gone 2, 4, 1.
I'll take it. You know, it's like, you know, we're not live or anything.
The prize is 4, 2, 3. Tracy 4, 3, 1. Grace got 2 and 4 tied in first place, then 3 and 1. That's not how it works.
Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, that my wines are 1 and 4. Make sure that they're in your top 3. Otherwise, we'll not do these anymore.
You didn't even choose your both 2 wines in your top 4.
True,
I would have known you were, you know what I mean, because you couldn't have not put that Toronto's as one because you really loved it.
I really love that wine. It's brilliant. I'm taking the rest of that home.
Susie Dave on 4, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 3 respectively. So there we go. I've got to listen. The Marinette is coming in.
4 and 1
coming in
hard,
hard.
you know.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You can buy it off B van Goeten at morgenrun.co.uk. And if you tell me the discount code, then I will completely ignore it.
Tell me this account and I will tell you to fuck off.
I am a Dutch account manager, no discount.
Is 4, 3, 1. They've gone for there. Dr. Rach 4, 2, 3. So she knows what's up.
What about number 1, Rachel?
Only Lale's gone for number 1. I've got to be honest with you. I think number 1 is suffering from the
being the first wine on the tasting.
Being the first wine.
Yeah.
Not just the first wine. There's like loads more expensive everything else. Come on.
It is.
Is it?
No, it's not.
It's far less expensive than anything else.
Oh,
So
right.
what we're going to do here, guys, is we are going to should we go Busy Wizzy or should we go Red Queen?
I don't care about this point. It's
It's important people to pay for this.
Shiraz. I want big boy.
Would you want
I just-
or do you want a palate cleanse?
I just want, well, whilst I'm
Do
still in,
Shiraz and then we'll do the fizz at the end, right?
whilst I'm still in the room, what did you sell the most of? The bonus bottle of fizz or the most of the Oh, no one cared. Okay, that's fine.
So, all right, okay. Wine number 5 for those of you that went for it. This is the Red Queen of the Eden Valley. This is a straight Shiraz made by Elena Brooks.
Your
Wait.
favourite, Tom.
No, I was going to say Tracy likes this one, don't you?
Yeah, but you know,
I'll be honest with you,
only makes you your favourite.
This is a £90 bottle of wine, right?
Tracy got 4. You just can't stop her from buying this
Tracy
stuff.
once told me a story, and she will concur. She went to a lovely little place, which was near the cathedral, but it did, like, you know, wine's like, oh, I remember, I recognise.
I know that
It's
wine.
great. So I'll buy that, but I had the grey label of the dandelion, so it's not the white label, which is the entry level. This is their top end
I
wine.
don't think you drank one bottle. It was like more than one bottle as well. And then when it came, it was like, oh my goodness.
You owe me
Yeah.
£2,000.
Yeah. Good wine though. Like you said, it's great wine. I
Good
think that's
wine.
how the story always ended. It was great wine though. Yeah.
This is wow, unbelievable.
Holy shit.
Is it going to change my? Yes, it is.
That's completely unfair. You can't. And Tracy says all true, by the way.
Yeah.
All true. You can't compare this to any other wines. It's completely unfair. It is literally triple the price.
Absolutely.
So when I said the last one was inky, I was like lying because this one is inky.
That smells like raw lamb.
Are you going to hate this because it's Shiraz, Tom?
No, he said raw lamb. He loves raw lamb.
Huge raw lamb guy. What
You want raw
He likes
lamb?
he likes a,
handfuls of lamb mince.
he likes a raw lamb.
With a bit of crunchy egg yolk on top.
Sarah says it strangely smells of tomato sauce, which I completely agree with.
It's not staining again, maybe a little bit actually.
It definitely, yeah, no, it is.
So let's dissect.
Well, that's so good.
It's like looking deep into
the devil's soil.
What do you mean it's not fucking staining? What the fuck is that? Is a stainy burn.
I expected more because you know, what they do is they like hand plunge it 3 times a day to extract it. Yeah, as much colour and knowledge and skin as they can.
Wow. I don't think I've ever actually tried this one, you know, somehow by some miracle. So I'm really,
You don't want me to do.
I'm really excited.
Barry.
That's on video. Terrible.
It's live stream to the world. One of
I'm really excited.
27 subscribers.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, fine. Unbelievable.
It is super complex, right? So you know that there are going to be natural
Whoa.
comparisons made between this and Lekker Henschke.
This feels like you're drinking undiluted cordial, just like straight out the bottle. You've just forgotten how to cordial. Hang on. You're all right, Bina. Yeah.
Doesn't need water.
No. It's asking Harry to make you a cordial. He goes,
Come on, Harry, make a cordial. Like,
so nice. It tastes like double concentrate. Like,
Thanks, mate. I like big flavors.
okay.
it tastes, yeah, there's a lot going on.
I tried to scroll my phone like this. That's not going to work, is it?
No, not at all.
Hey, so Elena Brooks, she's a bit of a legend, right? And it's so this is a little bit of a tiny violin story for me. This is not this one, but what's it called? The Lionheart.
Oh,
Lion's Tooth, yeah, of the McLaren Vale, which is a Shiraz Riesling blend. That's the wine that got me into wine. So I once picked it up at the same store where you paid for the nose for this one. Well, not for the nose, you paid
accurately for
but
this
you
one.
didn't,
Yeah.
you didn't think you were going to pay that, Tracy. But yeah, that's where I picked this up and was like, wow, that's an unusual blend. And that's when I sort of stopped buying from the supermarket. I still do sometimes, you know, when it's convenient. But yeah, this is the wine that sort of like started the journey into the wine world for me. Absolutely. It's still wine.
So I think it's still one of the like firm favourites of Grape to Grain, I think, isn't it? You know, it's
Has been
legendary.
for a long time. Will continue to be so for a long time as well.
Yeah. Absolutely
Unbelievable.
outstanding.
Her story though, she's from Bulgaria, so former Soviet Union Republic, something like in a similar ilk.
Yes, yeah, indeed. Bulgaria.
When that all stopped, they had loads of influx of tourists and people that wanted to go and try the wines in this ancient way of making wine. She was 12 years old at the time. It was her mum's winery. She didn't speak any English. She was the only English-speaking person, so she started, translating and interpreting, and started hosting tastings at like 14 to like winemakers from Australia. And by the time she was 15, she was making her own Chardonnay. And then she did, yeah, it's incredible story.
Well, what's your excuse? What are you doing? You're on TikTok. You could be making your own Chardonnay.
She's making her own Chardonnay, and
are your kids on TikTok?
I think Jolie is.
Are you on TikTok?
Absolutely. Are you?
I was on Roblox. Anyway, Jolie's on. She says she just watches by him. I've seen her do the weird dancing videos, and it's like, oh, so you're not really doing that. Anyway, at 15, she was making her own Chardonnay. Then she went into oenology school, learned how to make wine properly. She then, on work experience, ended up in Australia, met at a wine fair, at the trade show, showcasing some wine. She met Zara Brooks, who was a wine journalist. They fell in love, and they created Dandelion Vineyards a little bit later. This is actually owned by a German immigrant, which is what you see an awful lot in Australia, like Henschke, for instance, they have German descendants. This guy is a 110-year-old plus vine matter, it's like hush hush, really old.
Yeah, the big German influx into Australia started in 1840.
That's right, yeah.
In 1842, that's when some of the vines were planted. And those vines, they're still fucking about with those vines now.
Well, it was actually Peter Lehman who
that was it.
It was called the Barossa, isn't he? Because he stopped.
He calls himself.
Well, he's passed away now, so it's fine. Like he did. But he was the guy that stopped all these people that didn't have a clue about viticulture, saying, "Stop pulling those vines out.
Yeah,
I will buy the fruit of you, and as soon as I sell,
I'll take your grapes and turn them into wine.
And then when I sell it, I'll pay you." And he did.
I'll only be able to pay you when I sell the wine.
He saved most of the old vine matter in the Barossa Valley, actually, and which is an incredible story. And wow, well, this is actually Eden Valley, isn't it?
It is Eden Valley, yes.
Absolutely sensational. This is what old vine does to it. Concentration of flavour, small clusters, less clusters of berries as well on the vine. Concentration of flavour inside of those little berries, though. Wow, is this going to change the lineup of your wine, though, even though it's Shiraz, Tom?
Well, let's have a little crack at it, shall we? Number 5 smells like fresh blood, tastes like rye beef. Yeah. It's wonderful.
Amazing.
Really good.
That's mega.
So your thing, do you probably, if I ask you, is like, what's your least favorite grape variety? It will be Shiraz, won't it?
God damn.
Do you like that?
That's, you can't say that this isn't delicious. It's.
But do you still prefer the Monastral? It's completely fine because that's my wine. If you say like you prefer that better than this one, that's perfectly fine.
No,
too many spicy.
He's like,
too many spicy. He's crying, ladies and gentlemen.
Right there.
Right in the kisser.
Right in the kisser.
Unbelievable, that. That's sensational glass of wine.
It's the thing about expensive wine, right? Is what it does beyond the glass, right? It dominates your mind. It dominates the room. It occupies it forces itself in somewhere, and it makes you consider it. You cannot ignore it.
You cannot ignore it as soon as you open the bottle. It's got a room with a aroma. It's like, hold on, why do I smell that? It's like, this is the wine. By the way, let's have a conversation.
Like some wines are, we say it quite a lot, right? It's fire and forget. It's kind of like posh, one and gone.
Cheap stuff, yeah.
And it has to be
delicious
because not every wine can be. But when you get a wine that is just transcendent like that, it has to. It really is.
Breaking the glass.
It's really something quite fucking special. My 5th important individual is a lady called Sarah Morphew Stevens. She was the first female master of wine. First female MW. Nowadays, women make up about half of the candidates. to go
How many is that in the world? Is it still on like 300?
It's not many.
It's not many.
It's less than
It
1,000.
wasn't until 1917 that the very first woman, Sarah Stephen, earned the MW addendum to her name. She, like Elena Brooks, started early. Her interest in wine started at age 11 while staying at a friend's house in Madeira. She tread grapes to help make the table wines at her friend's Pinta, which is some fucking class privilege right there.
Yeah,
when I was 11, I just trod the grapes in order to make the table wine at my friend's Pinta. But did you really? When I was just 11, all I did. Yeah. But one thing which is quite interesting. So obviously in Madeira, which is off the western coast of Portugal, she met a member of the Symington Port wine family. At 17, she wrote to the Symingtons in Porto asking to be a trainee. Their reply was swift and unequivocal. In case you needed to put fucking read between the lines, not positive.
Yeah.
Is that what that means?
And it said, in our opinion, there is no place for a woman in the wine trade.
Wow.
So she...
Which quinta is this? That's name shame.
This was at Symington Port. No, this is at age 17.
Oh, right.
Asking to be a trainee. She earned a scholarship to the Bordeaux University to study enology. It provided the opportunity to work alongside Émile Pinot in the Médoc and Saint-Emilion. Her first real wine job was in a laboratory in Langenbach in Germany. And she said, before I started, I worked with every department, including the cellars. She said, dressed in overall and boots, I was given the same jobs as men. When she returned to England, she discovered the Master of Wine program. Waited until 1970, when I felt I had a good chance of passing. The day the results were published, I received a 25-minute lecture on how to deal with the press from Michael Broadbent, who was the chairman of the Institute at the time.
Michael Broadbent.
So there you go.
Awesome.
416 Masters of Wine there are in the world currently. Only 500 have ever taken the exam.
Have even taken the exam, let alone passed?
Sorry, passed the
And
exam.
500 women passed the exam, and she was the very first woman to ever do so in
That's
1970.
It's such a small. I don't know. I feel like it gets thrown around a lot. Master sommelier, master of wine. When you're looking into things, but you don't realize how small that number actually is. It's teeny tiny. 416 people
In the world.
currently as an MW. That's
In the world, globally, that's crazy.
tiny. And the world of wine is massive, so far reaching. It's
Probably got to do with it. It's 40 grand a course and takes 5 years. And
I know,
whatever.
but there's a lot of people that have got a lot of funds,
I reckon you could do
resources,
it.
and stuff like that.
I reckon you can
Yeah.
do it.
No.
Then I could put it on my accolades, like, I remember, when she getting all the train.
Wow. So I'll do it for your thing.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's crazy. It's a big thing. So yeah, when you see anyone with MW after the name, it's not just like, oh, they've done wine exams. It's like they are.
No, they haven't just done wine exams. They are a master of wine. And it actually does mean something. That's one of the things about the WSET,
yeah.
that it is a
It leads you somewhere.
transcendent qualification. Namely that it is recognised and it has a legitimacy on a par with perhaps a qualification that you might receive from another institute of higher education.
Have we got more glass for this?
Lauren says 416 Master of Wine, 149 of them are women, so just over a third.
Pretty good.
So
Still there. Hi, Lauren.
Hey.
So just over a third, which is obviously is not a 50-50 representation.
But it's a decent chunk,
But
It's a decent.
if you look at sort of previous levels of women not being included in the wine industry and it being so male dominated, it is quite something. It'll come, dickhead. We'll get there. We'll overrun them one day. Okay, well, I mean, that's not. Okay.
It's about equality, not. Never mind. Extinction.
Right, let's go. We last one.
Okay, so our final wine is the Veuve Ambal Cuvée Excellence Crémant de Bourgogne. And Crémant de Bourgogne is a sparkling wine from the region known as Bourgogne or Burgundy. Burgundy is a little bit further south than perhaps the most famous sparkling wine region in the world. When I say perhaps, I mean definitely, namely Champagne. Because a little bit further south, we're expecting there to be some richer, slightly more intense flavors that come from the grape. Let's see how this turns out. The Veuve Ambal Cuvée Excellence. Barry and Jen, dissect, please.
Well, firstly, this is obviously a sparkling wine, so we need to pay attention to the mousse, which are the little bubbles that appear inside of the glass, if there are any. For me, there is a very delicate kind of mousse. Cremant is made in the same way champagne is made. So there's the secondary fermentation that takes place in the bottle. But because we're further south in latitude, which means you'll get more richness in the actual wine. So it's quite interesting to see. It's got a really lovely sort of like similar colour to mine.
Pale gold, right? Yeah.
Pale gold, lovely delicate mousse, real nice legs to the wine. On the nose, I get a bit of a lovely freshness, real like dominant sort of like orchard fruit kind of flavor profile, but there is a tertiary kind of underlying thing. It smells of Parmesan cheese.
Oh, nice.
I don't know.
There's definitely.
Have you seen this viral video, Tom, about the espresso martini with the Parmesan on top? Have you seen that, by the way?
What?
Yeah, and have you not seen that?
You've not done enough
That's
Instagram.
like super viral at the moment.
Yeah.
So people make an espresso martini and they grate a
lot of Parmesan
over the top of it.
Yeah.
And apparently it tastes amazing.
I just think it's something.
I don't know. It's just I can just smell it.
What's gone mad?
I feel like it was like a joke at first.
Yes.
Yeah, basically.
Why would you do that?
Someone's gone, oh, it tastes amazing, and someone else has made a video, oh, it tastes amazing, and everyone else is just telling each other it tastes amazing.
It's shit, doesn't it?
You should be fucking ashamed of yourself.
Cheese in my drinks, you know.
On the palate, it's really expressively explosion of flavor, really fruity, lots of pear drop, little underlying little bits.
It does have a richness.
It's been 24 months on the leaves, mate.
Right. Okay. So that will make a difference.
Minimum for champagne is 15.
Further south, make a big.
So there's a couple of things that will actually embody that, right? So firstly, it is because we're further down south in latitude. Secondly, the minimum aging of champagne is 15 months. So some of the bigger houses will go minimum, brush it out. Like, okay, let's make some money. These guys are going nearly double of that for their Cremant, which is amazing.
Is
any sparkling wine made outside of Champagne.
Outside of Champagne,
so it's in France. Yeah.
It is 100% it's like a fucking cheat code, isn't it? Cremant de Loire, Cremant d'Alsace, Cremant de Bourgogne,
Limoux,
Cremant de Limoges, Limoux rather, not Limoges.
Bordeaux makes them as well.
Yeah, there's heaps of it, you know, and I feel like when I was in Bordeaux, I did go to Bordeaux.
Did you?
Yeah. One thing that did surprise me was the sparkling wine. So we were sat in this lovely sort of, tasting room, floor to ceiling, like glass everywhere, looking out. And I was expecting, okay, we'll start off with some, the Entre deux Mots or like something like that. And we'll start off with some whites and we'll maybe move on to some reds and stuff. They brought out some fizz and I was like, oh, this is not what I was expecting, It's not necessarily what we think of when we think of Bordeaux. But yeah, there's some really, really, really fabulous stuff. But I think Cremant gets overshadowed, it gets overlooked,
I think so too. And, I think Cremant for me, that doesn't always necessarily mean that Cremant is,
it's not always amazing.
It is 100% always better value than champagne, but it's not always similar quality.
Yeah. I mean, champagne reaches the standards that it does and has done consistently over the centuries to the point where it has earned the right to take the piss out of people price-wise.
Right?
It's
prestige, isn't it?
It is a luxury item, and it has the provenance and whatever to almost like, hey guys, I'm taking the piss. I'm taking the piss out of you.
Yeah.
But it's champagne, so take it and enjoy it, right? Cremant won't necessarily exceed that in terms of quality, but like you say, Barry, which I think was a really nice way to define. You guys have absolutely encapsulated this. It will always be. You'll get more bang for your buck, but the bang and the buck might be harder and better and faster and stronger with champagne, but you'll get more of it with a Cremant no matter where it comes from.
There is always a time for champagne, and it's usually a special time. If you don't have the special time money, then you invest in Cremant.
Listen,
as well, it's.
There's always a time for champagne when I'm thirsty, when I'm not, yeah, all of that.
And I won't ever drink it unless I'm thirsty. Yeah.
Awesome. That's it.
What a lovely tasting. I've got to be honest with you. I completely echo
Are you coming next time?
Dr. Rachel to say that having the trio
Are you coming back
together.
No, never again.
Busy.
Having the trio back together is a real treat. I don't know when we're going to do this again because you're back straight into your events and the next few.
Hey, I'm running next week. I'm busy.
We're going to Paris.
Going to, well,
Is that next week?
maybe.
Are you doing the Paris Marathon? Because you know who else is doing it?
No way.
Sam Burgess. No way.
Oh, you planned that? I thought you meant.
Is he running with you?
Yeah, no, I thought you meant the other guy.
Who's that?
I thought you meant.
We'll talk about it off camera.
Okay, fine.
I know I'm meeting him there. Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, so
Actually, oh, that's a mistake.
I've got to go.
that's fine. Good to see you, buddy.
Hey, Sam.
Great to see your return, Jen. Enjoyed the theme and the wine. Thanks lots to all three of you. So before we go, my final notable figure in the world of wine is Jen and Lauren.
Oh,
Because
So nice.
because the current crop of young folk coming through is obviously that much more representative on a 50-50 level. And when you've got young wine experts and professionals like Jen, or young wine makers like Lauren, who's still actually on board with us.
Hi, Lauren.
So, Lauren, would you mind awfully turning your camera back on so that we can see you again? That'd be really nice. You wouldn't mind. There she is. What up? You didn't drink any of the wine. But
you're for the show.
Tough chin is. The reason why I said is the notable figure of wine, much more representative. Okay, if you look at a 2020 poll, it said that. I'll find it here very shortly. From Wine Business Monthly, number of wineries owned by women increased by 45% over the last 5 years. Those wineries now account for 13% of all wineries in the United States. These women-owned wineries are not only producing top-quality wine, but also challenging traditional industry norms and shaking things up in the process. In addition to winemakers and winery owners, women are also making their own mark, because one of the things which is a real thing is not to just take over in a male-dominated industry, but to make an industry of your own and to pioneer in your own ways and to make female-led and creative things being and not just to take a piece of the men's pie, but to have your own fucking thing that you've created yourself. Where do you see the world of wine moving? Where do you see your position in that world of wine developing? And can you, in fact, put more than two words together, Jen? Currently.
Maybe. I feel it is moving, and it's moving in, I hope it's moving in the right direction. In terms of, I am seeing more representation, and even, I went to an event the other day and I was really nervous about going. It was like an in-person masterclass with an MW actually. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I almost talked myself out of going because I thought I'm just not going to get a look in. And I said to you, Laura, didn't I? I was like, there was way more, females there, and it was really well represented, and I instantly felt at ease, but I shouldn't feel like that. You know what I mean? It shouldn't even be a thought. So the day that I am confident enough to go to an event without thinking about that, I feel like that'll be really great. You know what I mean? That's probably more my personal sort of thing, but it's not the outside influence. As soon as I walked in, I was completely welcomed, and, everybody had time for everybody. So I feel like there's almost that I'm waiting for something to be that way when actually things are.
I'm moving in a positive direction already. Lauren, you're quite recently returned to these shores from fucking Australia, mate. Fucking Australia. There is obviously a quintessential, slightly comedic and clown-like figure within the British wine industry. He tends to wear red trousers. He tends to be from a public school background. Did you find that this badger, this Rupert, was equally represented in other countries where you worked, or did you find that it wasn't necessarily this slightly old school, stuffy public school approach to wine?
There is definitely
did you find there was a little bit more inclusive?
I do think it depends completely on where you are and who you. I found Australia was still very old school. Australia was very much still like a lot of the men are still very forefront. A lot of men are winemakers. You are seeing a lot more women winemakers now, but still not as much. I feel like you see more women in the hospitality side. And I mean, not just the fact that I think statistically women do drink more wine than men anyway, but then like the thing is getting those women into the higher positions, getting them into the managerial roles, getting them into those higher where they can kind of not take advantage, but really shine instead of just being like, oh, she's a wine waitress. Like Jen used to say all the time when you were working as a som, like you'd go over and you'd be like, hi, how can I help? How would I what wine can I get for you? And they'd be like, oh, you can send the male som over.
They were like, I'll wait for the gentleman to come over. And I'm like, okay, no problem. And I'd leave him for a few minutes and then I'd just
and I come back again.
What we fancy and then. And it was a bit of resistance, you know. But it is just that preconception, you know, you expect someone to.
But that blows the top of my head off, right? Because maybe it's because we've always worked in the hospitality industry, and at all levels of hospitality industry, I've always seen, whether it be owner operators, business development professionals, people working in wine, people working in anything. I've always seen such a good representation of that. The idea that somebody would come over and that I would go, oh well, you can't possibly be the expert because
you're female.
because you got boobies.
Well, I don't think it's even
like it's fucking mad. It's mayhem. I don't understand that.
Or people go, you know, when they do go, oh yeah, right, okay, yeah, we'll see what she's got to say. And then I do kind of go, what we fancy, you know, working your way through a big wine list it can be quite, you know, overwhelming. And then they go, you know, they've got the wine, they're super happy with it. And sometimes I get a little bit of, so how do you know so much?
I hate that.
How did you get that?
My job, you know what I mean?
I know so much. I know so much because Mum taught me.
Yeah, you did actually. But you know what I mean? That is not by no means. That's such a small, teeny. But you only remember the more challenging interactions, don't you? This is teeny tiny. You know what I mean? But those things become stark in your memory, and you know, I feel like, it's a difficult thing, you know, because you can't say one type of person is a certain way, you know, you can't blanket everybody like that. So I'm not saying that's everyone's preconception, but there were still elements of that.
The whole problem with this is a generalization.
It's people out there in the media.
That's obviously, and to generalize is to remove nuance and to not be able to have any kind of constructive conversation about the whole thing anyway. Yeah. But rather than ending on a negative note, ending on a positive note, where do you see both sides of the vine going, Lauren? What's the
moon? To the moon and back.
To the moon, what's can you give us a sneak peek on what the subject matter is going to be for your next pod?
Ooh, I mean, so we're still going a little bit more. We don't want to go too, you know, producer specific. We don't want to go too in depth. We want to keep it quite chatty. We do want to do a little bit on sustainable wines. You know, does it mean no? Oh. Does it mean?
Dog gives a fuck about your wine.
Linking, you know, sustainable wine, does it mean sustainable vines? Or sustainable vines, does it mean sustainable wine? So it's linking what's going on in the vineyard to what's, you know, being marketed in the end of the bottle, if that makes sense.
When we were talking about it, when you phoned me up when I was away, we had a really lovely chat about it. And the thing that I said that I would be most fascinated would be there will be insight into this that you will bring that Lauren won't, and the insight into this that Lauren will bring that you won't.
Exactly, yeah.
And the way that you guys have this conversation, I think the most fascinating thing about all of this is going to be how you complement each other and how you are able to show us, the name is appropriate, both sides of the vine. Yeah. That's the
thought about that.
That
we thought about that,
almost like
yeah, he wants to say hi.
Who's that?
Thinksy
dude.
Say hi to Shannon Claire.
Hi guys.
You could turn water into wine.
Is this our final four?
Still the best.
Is this our final four?
Right.
Final four.
Lauren,
thank
you so much for hanging out with us. It's been lovely to talk to you. Make sure you check them out, guys. Both Sides of the Vine on Spotify right now. The first episode came out last week and is a really fascinating listen. It's been lovely having you, Jen.
Thanks for coming, Jen.
Again, guys and girls, God bless Haile Selassie, Rastafari. Peace out. We'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.